And welcome back, everybody. This is the Drones Down Under podcast. I'm Danny, and I'm going to be your host tonight. With me, we have Sean, Ty, and Brendan. Say hi, gents.
G'day.
Hi.
How's everyone doing today?
Good to see you all.
Good evening.
Cool.
Hey.
Good.
So tonight's podcast, or tonight, we're going to be talking about how to start a drone company in Australia. Straight off the bat, Ty, have you got something you can show us?
Yeah, sure can.
Legend.
So I've got up here the Know Your Drone website for everyone listening at home, not necessarily watching. It's a pretty good resource for basically when you start right out. Obviously, you've got the ability to review all the rules, which that'll come up in a second. Got lots of videos and lots of explanation on the rules as well. Maybe you guys want to throw in a little bit of a quick run through some of these rules.
Yeah, it's probably this. I think the first one I got there is the 120 meter, the max height, which I think is actually 400 feet is the one that the compliance is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, correct. 400 feet AGL.
Yep. And I think we might park the 30 meter away from. Is it the 30 meter away from people? That's a whole nother topic, isn't it?
Right
Whole episode right there. And obviously one drone at a time. So that's clearly something that everyone should pay attention to.
Exactly. And a lot of us are males and can only do one thing at once. So one drone at a time, guys.
Yeah, if you think you can
It's much
multitask,
safer
you're
that
wrong.
way. I've actually got a good example of that in my video storage too. I'll have to bring out one day for Dummy of the Week of 2 drones and what can happen. So we'll leave that one there.
I look forward to it.
But yeah, obviously to keep the visual line of sight. It's obviously a paramount thing for what we do. It's the only way of really remaining safe and legal as well. And obviously the populous areas are important.
Mm-hmm.
What were you about to say today?
I was about to say, would you be able to explain the visual line of sight rule a bit further?
Yeah, sure. So it's pretty straightforward. You need to be able to maintain a visual line of sight with your drone at all times. You can't have this thing miles away where it's completely out of view. You need to be able to see it, or you need to have spotters there that are able to see the drone. Otherwise, it is technically an illegal flight. To do beyond the visual line of sight, you need to have special approvals to do so at this current point in time. But yeah, you need to be able to see this thing at all times.
And FPV goggles, can we wear them and maintain line of sight?
Well, no.
Unfortunately, no.
This is why Casa doesn't like FPV drones.
I've
I think
heard
you made a good point, Ty, as well with the visual line of sight, is that you as the operator technically don't have to have eyes on the bird. If you've got other team members that are on the other side of the building that you have direct communication with, that is still technically, you've got visual line of sight of your drone. So
would those operators have to be in communication with the pilot in command?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so
like radio or phone or something.
Radio or on your phone or something like that. But yeah, as long as
a clear line of communication.
Clear line of communication, and then once it leaves your visual line of sight as the person with the remote in your hand, and then the other operator or your spotter is on the other side of the building or structure or bridge or whatever, they've got visual line of sight and they can communicate to you if you're too close, too far away. That's still within keeping visual line of sight.
It's always good to know.
Yeah.
Also, one thing I might add as well.
It has to be able to be seen. Yeah. Sorry, I was just going to say it just has to be seen at all times by either you or your spotters. It can't be off in its own world doing its own thing without no one seeing it at all.
You also need to be able to orientate the drone's direction unaided as well. So if you're flying it hypothetically, say 500 meters, you need to be able to tell which way the drone's facing. And I don't really think any of us can see a Mavic Mini that far away.
No.
No, no. No,
Definitely not.
All right. Respect personal privacy. Did we talk about that already?
That's a hard
No,
one. I think that's a
no,
hard one
we
as
haven't.
well. So it's a pretty
It gets into the Privacy Act there, which is pretty intense.
yeah, and it's very opinionative, I guess. Depending on
Yeah,
if
it's
you're
a bit of a grey area, that one.
yeah, like where do you draw the line if you're a real estate photographer and things like that? Like how do you do those?
Unless you're talking
deal
to
with that?
every single
Yes.
neighbor, that's pretty much the only way of doing it, like
Yeah.
legally, essentially.
Yeah.
Which we all do, we might add. We talk to every
It's
single
definitely
neighbor.
something. Yeah, it's definitely something that has come up a lot over the years, especially doing real estate. When you're chatting to neighbors, and they are always concerned about what you're doing, what you're filming. But that's why we have to tell them. That's why I have to sit there and go, hey, look, we're putting a drone up in the air. We're taking some photos of this property. Look, you may hear it, but we're not peeking at you around the pool, basically.
I think common sense, like you said, go have a conversation with them and let them know.
It's easier to have that conversation than have a yell-in match, within 5 minutes of launching a drone.
Yes.
While it's in the air, that's always fun.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think as well, if you
want
are
is
doing sort of real
distractions.
estate, distractions. Have a sign with you. Just put a sign out saying drone operation. A basic A-frame sign makes you look 10 times more professional, like you're supposed to be there, over someone that's just flying a drone for fun. So, if you don't
add
put
some
it out,
witches' hats and a high vis vest at the same time, and
That's
you're like,
exactly right.
And no one questions you when you got that high vis on.
high vis on, they walk away. They just go, oh, this is
No.
serious business.
high vis is access to everywhere.
Yeah.
Backseat to any concert, no worries. High vis and a pizza box, you're sweet.
Yeah.
Oh man, I've got some stories from gigs back in the day of when I was working as a photographer with high vis, but we'll leave them for another conversation another time.
We should totally chuck that onto a uncut, unseen, unedited safety tie segment. So the next one is
There'd be some definitely no safe moments there.
Ooh, no comment. So our next one is, if your drone weighs more than 250 grams, you must fly at least 5.5 kilometers away from a controlled airport, which generally has a control tower at them. That sounds like a lot for someone that's just got into drones.
Just stay away from airports.
Yeah.
Probably the best way to say that.
Where it says
The
controlled
basis of that rule is stay away from airports.
Don't be in the news.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Don't end up like those ones in Heathrow that were like, I think it was twice in a matter of like a month or two last year, wasn't it? Where they both got up and shut down the entire Heathrow airport, which just does my head in.
Didn't that work out to be a police drone or something?
Yeah,
Or
it worked out to be the police.
One of them was, but the other one wasn't. The other one, I'm pretty sure from memory, was a recreational pilot just being a bit of an idiot, from what I remember.
Why, of all places? But that's another story for another day.
So
Heathrow.
Do we use something like an Open Sky to check where the airport locations are, perhaps, or any other apps that we can recommend?
Most definitely. And I think you guys would remember that we've spoken about that. I think back in episode 1, or was it episode 2? Actually, we did speak about Open Sky, didn't we?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's definitely an app that I recommend most recreational pilots, or every recreational pilot really has. I mean, we use it professionally, and I think to a recreational level, it's your one way to guarantee at least where airports are, where you can and can't fly. Any other possible dangers in the area usually come up on that, so it's definitely worth having.
Yeah, and even that one, Danny, you mentioned last time, is the OK #2 fly.
Yeah,
the web browser. That's a good one as well.
Yeah, they're all good. They give you essentially a green light or a red light. It's like, yes, you can fly. No, you can't fly.
Yep.
There is other instances where there's helipads and whatnot, but it generally breaks down to an easy bit of information.
What makes you aware what's surrounding, right? That's
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. And I think Open Sky, you can choose what class or category you're going to be flying under as well. So Yeah.
recreational sub
Yeah, you
yellow,
can.
then
You can
re-op
select
it.
either. Yeah.
Hmm.
And then it'll tell you, yeah, yes, no, maybe. And then it breaks it down even more. If you're a REOC holder, you can only fly
Yeah.
here if you've got the REOC and approval, or you follow your guidelines or whatever it is. So
Yeah.
there's a lot to get into.
Yeah.
Well, actually, this backs onto the next point as well. Okay to fly also includes your hazards, like say fires and bushfire reduction burns.
True.
Which the next point on here is,
Yes.
remember, you must not operate your drone in a way that creates a hazard to another aircraft, person, or property. Well, if there's a fire, a lot of the time they're dumping was it the fire retardant on top of the fire? You don't be flying drones around there. And I remember
Yeah,
when we
or,
had those
or
massive
water bombing. That's the
Yeah.
other thing.
They come in low and fast.
Yeah.
Like the 2019 bushfire.
We actually have them. Yeah, we actually had same thing. I think it was actually still in 2019, but it was up here. We actually have a dam not far from where I live, and the water bombers were flying over that. We actually got to watch it, which was pretty cool. They fly over, they grab the water, they go straight back over and then drop it. And there was 3 helicopters, I believe, running back and forth for about
they are
2.5, 3 hours, putting the fire out.
How
Oh
beastie
God,
they
yeah.
sound.
And I'm telling you right now, they would. Oh, they're nuts, and they fly very, very low.
Yeah,
So
they're well under the
yeah,
400 foot.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to be in the air when they're flying around. That's for sure.
And you got to keep in mind, you get if a helicopter hits a drone of any size, maybe not the 250 gram, but
It's done.
you are putting other people's lives in danger, and it's not just the pilot; it's also the people that
Exactly.
will crash into. You know,
And anyone underneath the helicopter.
Yeah. So
We've
there's big problems.
We've seen enough movies to know how much damage a helicopter flies at when it falls out of the sky.
Yeah.
Jerry Brocker, my movie.
Definitely.
On to our next point. You must only fly during the day, and you must not fly through fog or cloud. I've seen some pretty good videos of over Sydney Harbour in the fog. Looks great, but I don't know.
Yeah. See, I don't know. I think depends on the thickness of the fog, right? If you can maintain visual line of sight of your aircraft
Through fog. That's an interesting one, man.
Well, it might just be really thin fog. It might not be like, it might just be like a mist, and you can still see all your indicator lights. You can still see everything.
Right.
I was trying to photograph fog the other day. I missed.
Oh, very good.
No, I'm serious. I didn't fly.
I like that one, Danny. Good work.
I've been holding on to that one since episode 1.
Dad joke level, I love it.
You wrote that one down. I know you did.
I did. I've got it right here on my screen next to me. Squeeze it in somewhere, guys.
Oh dear, that's a shocker.
So our next
All right,
point,
well, we can go on to the next one as
Should
well.
we break down fog, thin fog, wide
Thin
fog?
fog, thick fog,
Or is that another topic?
really thick fog.
I guess keep line of, if you can still keep line of sight, I guess the fog isn't thick enough, right?
Yeah.
Not fog. It's just
I reckon it'd still be pretty hard in a light mist to see a white phantom in the air.
absolutely.
So even
And
with
it
the
comes down
lights,
to
so-
common sense. If you're flying a
obviously,
Phantom,
yeah.
it's different. But if you're flying an Inspire or a Matrice 300, it's different again. So, just common sense, people.
Common sense isn't common these days.
There's no such thing as common sense.
I think we've already kind of covered the next point, where you must not fly your drone over an area affected by a public safety or emergency operations. That's pretty much about fires and whatnot. You can check your OK to fly sites, and it'll tell you if there's a fire or any emergency operations. Sean, do you want to explain the next one?
Oh, sorry. I was going to ask, what if you got contracted to map a car crash scene? Is that
I think because they actually are the emergency operations. I don't know. DJI publicly shows that they fly over crash sites.
Very true.
Wonder if they're real crash sites.
Who knows?
I'd be curious if anyone knows any police that would like to come on board, or anyone, emergency services. Actually, we were talking about that before the episode, weren't we?
Yeah.
Yes,
It would be a good one to actually go.
That would be a good one. They'll probably do it in-house anyway, so they get the exemption.
Yeah, true. If you're anywhere near a helicopter landing site or small aerodrome without a control tower, you can fly your drone within 5.5 kilometers. So how do we define the controlled and uncontrolled airspace?
Go check your airspace.
Air
Use the
traffic
apps.
control tower.
Yeah.
And yeah, obviously finding it on the apps.
Yeah.
So
I think any time you're about to go fly anywhere, you got to check the apps, no matter who you are and what you do, especially recreational. If you're just going down to a park, I know you see it all the time. You see people whip drones out and they're like a couple of kilometers away from, Moorabbin Airport or something like that, which is a controlled airport, not supposed to be flying. I know it's probably, not the end of the world, blah, blah, blah. But if something goes wrong and your drone fails, you're potentially putting people's lives at risk. So at the end of the day, it's always comes back to what risk and liability are you prepared to hold, because that drone has a serial number, has flight records, and it knows exactly where it took off from, everything like that. DJ, I've got your information. So it's inevitable that you're going to get caught if something goes wrong.
Yeah. A good point to note that you mentioned.
And probably just worth noting.
You go, Ty.
You keep going, Danny.
I was going to say.
All right. Yeah, all I was just going to say, it's just probably worth noting that, because it just prompted me when you said about parks there, Brendan. I know in Queensland, for example, there is actually in Brisbane, there is actual designated parks for people to go and recreationally fly a drone and practice and learn how to fly, because end of the day, it sometimes can be hard to find spaces where you can legally fly and practice your maneuvers and all of that stuff. But I know, I can't say for New South Wales and Victoria, obviously you guys might have a bit of a better idea, but I know definitely in Queensland and in Brisbane in particular, there is several parks where you can go and fly recreationally and practice your skills without having to worry too much if you're in a safe area as such.
That's pretty awesome. Is that a council initiative or is it state?
I'm pretty sure that's a state initiative. I'm not entirely sure, but I'm pretty sure that's a state initiative.
Definitely worth looking into then. I know New South Wales doesn't have anything. I can't speak for the Melbourne guys.
Well, I know Geelong Council's quite good, where you can just apply for a permit online, and within, I think, 24 to 48 hours, you get a permit.
That's cool.
As long as you do that, which is really good, because for us, most of the, most parks, you can't really fly, as you all know. So you need to have a conversation with the council, and every council is different, right? So typically nature strips, pedestrian walk access, parks, local parks, you can't take off and land. So I think most people don't realize that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Sean, because at the end of the day, when you really break down the rules, it is almost impossible to just go and take your drone and fly, as if it's not within your own backyard and you're not going up above other people's homes and you're staying lower than your fence. Because when you're going out into a public open space, then you're going into populous areas, then you're flying within 30 meters of people, all those other bits and pieces.
And it's council-owned land.
Yeah.
So
yes. So like on the Sunshine Coast, for example, they actually made it illegal to fly over any Sunshine Coast council-owned land recreationally, and in some cases commercially. We do have a RC airfield up here in Coolum, and they basically encourage you to go and fly your drone there. But again, it's something I don't believe I've ever heard of them enacting. But it came into effect, I believe, at the start of this year. They actually expect you to get special permits for certain flights and things now, but from council, not from CASA. But yes, like I said, I haven't heard of it actually being enforced as such at the moment. I think it's a bit of a blanket rule just for them to pick and choose when they want to enforce it, to be honest.
Is that even taken off from private property as well? Is that if you take off from private property as well?
No, that's where the loophole. Okay. No, so in Sunshine Coast, private property is fine, but as soon as you're off private property on council land, technically it's legal.
Yeah, I think it's the same here. A lot of the time we just avoid dealing with council unless we have the correct permits. When, say, hypothetically for real estate is private property. because a lot of the time you do require council permits to, you got to set up your bollards, your cones, witches hats. And we all know how much Ty loves his witches hats.
They're stunning things.
I think it's
You'll
also
never
probably
let that down, eh?
No, I'll link
I
that
think
video in the description, trust me.
I think the best thing to do is call and chat to the council and or get online, look at your local council, and see what their conditions are. It shouldn't be, they're being quite friendly. They're also learning a lot themselves, so best just be open before don't try to ask for forgiveness. That's not really going to work too well lately. So,
Forgiveness can be expensive.
Yeah. Yes, can be very expensive.
And I guess the last point for us here, which actually will lead us onto our next topics. If you intend to fly your drone for work or just commercially, there are a few extra rules you must follow. You need a remote pilot license or to fly in the excluded category, which is a sub 2 kilogram or private landowner. Which is going to lead us into the next topic of what licensing do I need, guys?
Yep.
I'll stop sharing my screen.
Do we want to chat at all about that sort of, because there's a lot of people taking photos and posting on social media and thinking they don't need licensing. But I think the point to raise is if there's an intent to sell, irrespective whether you sell a photo or not, you need to have the appropriate license.
Yeah, like realistically, if you're posting photos, like I'm sure every Instagram account out there does it. If you're selling a photo, even that's intent to make money in the end, which breaks down into the different categories.
I think it's a good thing because there's a lot of people doing very dumb things out there. So
yeah, and happy to post it on social media.
Oh yeah.
Once it's on the internet, it's there forever. You can't get rid of it.
Forever. Yeah, we'll catch it, we'll snap it,
Exactly.
we'll screenshot it, it'll be dubbed in.
Someone's cranky.
Oh, trust me, there's
I'm
been
just
plenty
joking.
of times I really want to do that, Brendan. There's certain topics that I'm eventually sure we'll cover, and when we do, I'm probably going to go to town a little bit.
Well, actually, what we're
I've
going to
got
do,
plenty to say.
we should just start bringing and putting up here. So
True.
Name and shame segment.
Look at this guy. Look at this one. This is
what's his handle?
yeah. Everyone, go check out so-and-so.
Trust me, I have a long list of them, so
Jeez.
Yeah.
I might not make many friends.
This is Ty's hit list, everybody. He now has brought it up on the screen, and there is about 4,000 something names.
Oh, mate, I reckon there'd be more.
So rule of thumb is you don't want to get on Ty's bad side.
Safety tie.
Safety tie, sorry.
Safety tie. Yeah.
So okay, guys, it's Christmas Day, and I just got my first Mavic. What do I do? What do I need to buy? Do I need a license? I just want to take some pretty photos.
What's your plan, Danny? You just want to take some photos?
I'm going to take some photos, and my auntie wants to buy one of those photos I took with the Mavic Mini. So do I need a license for that?
No.
Okay, well,
Pretty simple. Go get your accreditation off the CASA website. Become a accredited CASA operator, and then you're good to go.
okay. I've heard about a thing called an ARN. Is that something I need?
I would highly suggest get an ARN. I think most people, anyone that's sort of going into this space, they should just register. It's free. It's not going to cost you anything, and you get aeronautical registration number.
It's an aviation reference number.
Aviation, yeah.
So that number links to our licenses and our everything really.
Pretty
Any
much.
application we
CASA
deal with.
portal, everything.
Yeah, drone registrations, applications, licensing, everything that's related to the industry in CASA, yes, fines.
They know where you are.
Will go to relate to your ARN.
Yeah.
They definitely know where you are.
I do.
Especially if you're flying in DJI.
Especially in Sydney. There's a few aeroscope systems from what I've heard through the grapevine. And they can see everything up to a 10K radius even. So any drone you turn on, they see it. That's at least for Sydney siders.
Okay.
I don't know about you guys.
Well, they actually had the same in Gold Coast for the Commonwealth Games. What, last year, the year before, whenever it was. They actually were really concerned about drones over the Gold Coast with Commonwealth Games, just because there's just heaps of idiots essentially down there that like to fly them when they shouldn't. And they actually implemented that while they were down there. I believe they actually pulled a good handful of drones out of the sky. From what I understand, there was, I don't know on the technology, haven't looked it up, but apparently they were able to essentially pinpoint a drone, bring it down out of the sky safely, and then obviously if they were correctly registered or correctly associated with an ARN, they definitely followed those people up and they would have been in a little bit of trouble. But from what I understand, it's quite an interesting tool. They can just bring them down safely, go collect it and find out who owns it and go and have a bit of a chat. So
Yeah. There we go. As we say, Big Brother's watching.
It's more than anything. It's just if you decide to go into that and develop a career, you want to start doing all the right things. So.
Yeah, it's true, and you don't want to jeopardize a
Definitely.
career off taking one photo or one student move.
No.
So
it's not worth the likes on Face, you guys, or on Insta.
Nah, really not that good either. So yeah, get off your high horse.
So after the say ARN and getting your accreditation, what would be the next level of licensing for say career growth or trying to get into the industry?
So it's probably the REPL, right? So the remote pilot license.
Okay.
Which has I think the starting 7 kilograms from memory, and then
Yes.
and then 25 kilograms, right? So I think with that, obviously that's the main thing there is that's for an individual. So if you can then you'll still have that same ARN for that operator accreditation, and then you basically be accredited with an RPL, which allows you to fly anything sub 7 kilos, like your Mavics, your Phantoms, quite a few different options, I think. And then if you decide to go up to the 25, obviously you can fly much more sort of industrial-based drones.
Yeah.
Sorry, Ty.
Obviously, it's also worth noting that, pardon me. Yeah, sorry, Sean. It's also worth noting that during doing your REPL, quite often you get offered to potentially do your AROC as well, your aeronautical radio license, so you can actually communicate with air traffic control, which is a nice skill to have in your back pocket. It's not necessary for everyone, but it's definitely a good tool to have in your back pocket, and to be able to understand too what comes through the radio.
Yeah, they're not talking like just channel 40 on the CB radios down the highway.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's interesting chat, isn't it, guys? Like you kind of listen. It's a completely different world of communicating up in airspace. It's very cool.
And look, if you haven't done your AROC, you're going to struggle to understand it too. I think even once you've done your AROC, sometimes it can be a little bit cryptic, but yeah, it's definitely worth having it.
Yeah.
I guess it's. No, go for it.
I was going to say, the only thing I've had experience with radios when you, I guess, call into the tower to say, notifying them you're in controlled airspace. Through most of everyone's procedures and manuals that you have to follow, you kind of have to make a radio call depending on where you are in the airspace. And I've had 90% of the tower saying, don't you dare get on your radio and tell us that you're flying your drone, because we personally don't really care. We thank you for calling us in. But if you're not within 3 nautical miles, we don't really care.
Wow.
Fair enough. They just
they said that back over the radio, or
that's interesting.
Not on the radio, on the phone. So when you call up 15 minutes before, and you speak to the tower and just say, look, this is my location. I'm going to be here for the next X amount of hours or whatever. In some part of your procedures, you have to go, do you want me to make a radio call to announce to the airspace? Yeah, 98% of the time, the control tower has told me to go, no, just have it on you. If something happens, we'll call you on your mobile. We're not even going to get you to use your radio. Don't clog up our airspace communication just to tell people where you're operating a drone.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly.
That's really interesting.
It's
which is quite fascinating that would they actually give us that, I guess, capability to have the chat. I actually always wondered how much they would appreciate that, to be honest. But I figured, I've never actually had to use it. So that's interesting coming from someone who has actually had to use it, Brendan.
Yeah. So it's
here's the funny part. Everything I've had to deal with was complete opposite.
Really?
So a lot of the time we actually had a bit of a contracting job over the space of a year. We've had to deal with 1.5 nautical miles from the end of the Sydney runway.
Yep.
I'd have to call the tower, they'd check the instrument, check the time in. And literally this would be a 2 or 3 minute conversation. Then they're like, please announce on the radio as you're about to fly. All good, announced it. They reply back, we fly. I had to announce at the end of the flight and call them at the end of the flight. Maybe because it is in direct flight path, maybe, even though I was, they were probably 800 foot, well, who knows how high at that point. But yeah, that was part of the same operation every fortnight.
I'd say that'd be a big part of it. That you're in the runways, it would be a big part of that, Danny.
Keep in mind, that is obviously for the people listening, that is because we operate under a REOC. We had to go through the right procedures, fill out the correct forms, pay a nice fee to be able to get approval to actually fly there.
Yeah. I guess that leads us into the next section, right?
I was going to say, I think with RAPL, the good thing with going through that course is the fact that it goes through a lot of detail around reading weather maps and
weather
charts and so forth.
Voltages, everything. You need to know what cloud is up in the sky.
Aeronautical maps.
Different types of fog,
really
I think,
valuable.
Brendan was
Different
one
types
other
of
one.
fog, that's it. Yeah.
Yes, types of fogs, isn't there?
I'm sure you guys will remember back when you did your RPL, when you looked at the VTC map for the first time and like, what the hell is this?
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's one of the many things that scares the piss out of you when you're doing your course and you're like, okay, I need to understand this. My brain is melting. But I mean, it's honestly not too bad. Once you work it out, guys, the listeners at home, once you work out what everything is, it's not too bad. Yeah, it's just that initial time when you first look at the map, you're like, holy crap.
I get
a lot of lines.
The way I looked at it when I finished, I was like, okay, we're not actually physically flying in an aircraft. And what these maps represent are visual cues for people in physical aircraft. So if you're in a helicopter, you can see the control towers, or you can see the power line running for 5-6 kilometers down the mountain range. And on the maps, it shows you that power line going down those mountain ranges, which is really interesting when you start going into that mindset of, why are these things here? What do I need to understand? Is it relevant to me? And it is important, because when you're radioing into your tower or communicating with the airspace, you can actually talk to them in relation to that, to the map, on noticeable visual cues that they use in reference to where you are in the world, or where your operation is. I think that's the cool part in understanding how you can take your knowledge from a drone operating side of things and communicate it to the people up in the air of exactly where you are in their language. So it all just smoothly happens.
But it's also understanding the risks, Brendan, right? So it's from a simplistic perspective, just being aware that you're in a shared airspace, like driving a car. You just don't drive across 3 different lanes, do you? So
that's exactly right.
No, I've seen
we don't, Danny. Not in Melbourne.
You want to live.
We can't drive far enough to have multiple lanes at the moment in Melbourne. So,
5K radius, guys. We live in right now.
I think the other thing as well that
for you guys
blows people's minds is how busy an airspace can be with planes and helicopters. And there's some free apps that you can go onto, or websites that you can go onto, and just that are relating to planes, and download it. And it is absolutely mind-boggling how many planes are in the air in one go. and it is
Especially when you
it's
zoom
quite,
all the way out.
yeah, and it's
Yeah.
quite frightening.
Yeah.
Like, you're
Yeah,
looking
look,
at it and you're like,
I know
how
what you're
is that
saying.
possible?
I suggest people, if you find an app or website to do so, do yourselves a favor and go look over either LAX, JFK, or Heathrow Airport and have a look how many planes are in the air at one singular time, and you'll be really, really shocked.
Probably not
I've done
all.
it.
Not
I've
at the
done it with
moment.
LAX before.
Yeah.
No, not at the moment, but back in normal pre-COVID world.
Yeah.
But I remember doing it over LAX, and I was like, I don't know how they control this day in and day out, and no one dies because you see so many planes in
It's
the air.
unbelievable.
Organized chaos, honestly.
Yeah.
Mm.
I think a good app is just is called Plane Finder. Like, gives you everything.
Yeah.
You can literally click on the plane anywhere in the world and it will tell you what the serial number is, how many passengers, the type of plane, where it's took off from, where it's landing, the expected time, if it's been delayed, like everything. It will tell you everything. And then and it's just a free app. Just click on it.
That's cool. It's always
really
good when
cool.
you track your family and see how long till their flight comes in.
Yeah.
Oh, my
Yeah.
flight's
Oh, they're
delayed.
delayed.
Really?
I needed that app when I was a teenager to work out when my parents were coming home so I could clean up the house before they got home.
Are we sending this podcast to your parents as well, or?
Dad actually asked today to where the links and stuff were because he wants to watch it.
Yeah.
So.
And where can we find those links, guys? Sean?
Damn it! Why me, man?
You
Why
got get you again.
It's on socials.
West.
Pretty much
I'm
every
gonna-
social
I
media you
swear,
can think of.
I'm just gonna write it down. Just tell me.
I'll get you on the next episode. So the drones,
Again, it's like the third episode you've done.
Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, the drones down under podcast.
Yeah.
And
Isn't that what I said?
What's that?
I'm sure I said that.
Yeah, I thought you said that.
Thank you, Brendan.
Yeah.
Danny,
I was just alleviating on that. I'll get you on the next episode as well. Don't worry. Back to our scheduled appearances. So after the RAPL, what comes next?
Get your REOC.
REOC, but I'll leave this to you guys because I'm not a REOC holder. I'm just a pleasant little RAPL holder.
So if you're an RAPL holder, how are you working with a REOC? How does this work?
Because the guy to the right of me on my screen is my boss, and he has his operator accreditation, and I work under him.
There you go.
Yeah,
So-
me that side. Oh, that side.
I'll start it off, and then I'm sure we'll all throw our 2 cents in there. So the REOC, which is a remote operator certificate, essentially it's licensing the company, right? So the company holds the REOC, and then us four obviously have RAPL licenses, which allows us to operate under that REOC. So, so the REOC itself, I think it's important to call out that you cannot go do operations under a REOC unless you have an RAPL licensed operator, a licensed person. And there's there's a whole bunch of additional permissions that allows a REOC holder to do, for example, flying at night. And it's not just turning up and flying at night. There's a whole bunch of guidelines and within our manual of standards that we need to actually follow. So, so I think it allows us to carry much more complex operations. Obviously, Danny talked a little bit earlier around Sydney Airport, I think was one of the jobs. So, if you had an RAPL, don't have a REOC, you wouldn't be able to even apply to get a permit. So you've got to have a REOC to actually apply for a permit. And then fingers crossed, a few $100s later, you may not get that anyway. So
That's right.
If you're thorough enough with your applications, I guess 90% of the time the applications go through. It just depends on the complexity of it, what you're doing.
Yeah. And I think it's good to be aware of that you actually have to sit an exam or a quit. It's probably an exam you get questioned through CASA to be
Grilled.
Very thorough exam.
Don't you guys actually, like, obviously I haven't done it, but don't you guys actually have to go through a hypothetical operation with them where they basically pose this thing to you, then you have to go through that? And literally make the safe operation and go through all the steps to do so, from what I understand. But obviously
it really shows you how complex the most simple operation is. Like when you operate under REOC, there's no, oh, I'm just going to go fly over here. It's okay, you need your JSAs, you need your risk assessments, you know, you need to know everything that could go wrong or is going to happen on those operations.
Yes, I think the best thing to do is there is an operational procedure and manuals that we all have to adhere under. And each of us obviously have our own set, but there's a standard template that you'll start off from. But as Brendan called out earlier.
And you do have to write your own operations manuals, don't you? And still have them signed off via CASA as well for your operator's license?
I'm pretty sure now there actually is a standardized manual you can kind of download from the CASA site, and then you, don't hold me to this. It's kind of, you download it and kind of manipulate what you need to suit your operations, but that will get scrutinized down to every single word, abbreviation, everything through CASA when you actually submit it.
Absolutely.
And if you want to change anything as well, it costs more money.
So I think that those ops procedures and manuals definitely much more detailed. The other, I think, important step is making sure all your RAPL persons that are operating under the REOC are actually familiar with those. They actually need to sign off that they've actually read it.
Actually, our Bible, really.
And it's great because I think we all agree it's great to have those standards, and as long as it's practical to use them. So it's no point writing something you're never going to look at. So
hey, Sean, right now's a really good chance if you wanted to test tie on anything.
Now we catch up fairly.
Don't you dare!
Not right now.
If it's like night operations, for example, we don't always do night operations, obviously. So it's, you have to go back, refamiliarize yourself with it. We go through it together. I'm sure we all do it, right? So
you got to run your eyes over your procedures and manuals all the time, just to refresh what you're actually supposed to be what you're being held accountable for. Because at the end of the day, those procedures and manuals that you're operating amongst or with are all legally binding documents. So if you do something and it goes wrong and you haven't followed your procedures and manuals, you're in the shit, basically. It's almost.
Are you listening, Ty? I'm in the shit.
But it's true. The REOC holder is actually responsible for the RAPL, the pilots, and every operation. And you're essentially, like, we use automated software.
Anything that I do as a pilot, if anything I do as a pilot, if I essentially stuff up and I start doing silly things and that could end up causing us a bit of trouble, unfortunately for Sean, that's all on Sean.
But
well,
if
to an extent anyway.
If you're doing anything outside of
definitely something that you've got to be aware of.
In saying that, when the chief remote pilot does their flight authorization, if the RAPL holder does anything outside of what they've authorized, then it's on the remote pilot, not the chief remote pilot.
I
learned that one.
And I think that's the other important thing as well, because the REOC stays with the company or the entity. You have to, within that company, obviously nominate a chief remote pilot who oversees all of the operations that happen within that organization. And that chief remote pilot can change, and whoever, it's a bit of a process, because every chief remote pilot you nominate has to go through the same process of being interviewed by CASA, and it's almost like going for your application for your REOC again. And it's a painful process, but it's part of it. They have to make sure that you understand the role that you're taking on. You understand what you're going to be legally bounded by with those documents, operate your procedures and manuals. And then once they're satisfied, then you become chief remote pilot. But you're not going to put someone in a position where they kind of know what they're doing, but not really. They haven't read the procedures and manuals, or it's not a situation Castle want to put themselves in either. And I don't think the business will want to put them in a position where they don't have someone that's competent in that role.
Yeah, which funny enough, actually, that's pretty much what happened with me. So the company I work for, Hoverscape, started casual, working with them, worked my way up through it, and then I essentially took over the role of chief remote pilot. But to do that, it was a week of grind. It was one blur. I remember that Friday night, once I actually got the sign off, it's like 6 p.m. got the sign off from CASA.
Yeah.
I'm not much of a drinker, but I drank that night.
I bet you did.
It was the end of a very long week.
Mate, I drank when I got home from my REPL. So I imagine you definitely drank when you got home from that.
It's definitely stressful. There's no doubt. But it's like you said, there's a lot of responsibility. So I think anyone doing that chief role, you're not going to just do it because you like to. So.
And I think the other
fun.
the other layer of it as well is the chief remote pilot, and then there's other I guess roles within that REOC that people can hold as well, like the maintenance and things like that of the aircraft. So there's other things that it's not just the chief remote pilot. Like, myself, I'm the maintenance person. I oversee the operations, everything like that. But as the team grows and everything like that, then you've got roles to be able to put people in responsibilities for. And I think that's exciting for people in this space, because it's not just like you can just be a remote pilot for someone that has a REOC. There are other responsibilities within a REOC that people can take on that the chief remote pilot doesn't necessarily have to do and oversee. So there are avenues and ways that it's not just, you're not just a remote pilot. You can take on responsibility for part of that REOC within that company. And I think that's exciting within the business. I mean, within our industry, it's not just your operator or your remote operating certificate holder. There's two different aspects of it.
It's a good way of growing through a company. Even like, say, there is bigger companies out there that have, I don't even know how many pilots under them. And I admit, I'd imagine that the chief remote pilot would have his hands full, or her hands full with paperwork. But there is software out there actually that makes our life a lot easier. I mean, there's automated compliance software these days, which we'll name a few in another episode. I'm sure of it.
Absolutely.
We might even have one of them. So
stay tuned for the next episode, guys.
Yes, exactly.
I think we're still waiting for that sponsor deposit, right?
Yes. We can't say it. Do I get bleeped out if I say it?
I'm the one editing this episode.
Can we get some big novelty checks for that sponsorship money too?
Carry it in.
I hear Six Keys is our sponsor the next episode.
Sponsor money.
The other one was, I think, the records. I think we've all obviously touched on it, but I think, we've talked, I think, in the past episodes around, keeping track of your flight logs and so forth, which is great practice when you sort of operating under this level, how thorough we have to be. So as that unnamed compliance software that we keep talking about, that's a great way to maintain our operational records.
It really is. Actually, I'm pretty sure that's the next episode, isn't it?
It really is.
And now it integrates perfectly with DJI drones, which we'll talk about on the next episode. Stay tuned.
Exciting.
But honestly,
our audience understands the significant list of people we've got coming on this podcast. It actually blew me away. I was like, wow.
And for the people out there, we've kind of blown out our original number of guests too, I think, from memory. We started with a few, and next minute we had a hell of a lot. So
that page grew very quickly.
Even we were surprised.
Yeah, we were surprised ourselves, really, didn't we? We're like, wow, how do we know that many people to start with? And then why would they want to come on and talk to us at the end of the day? So it's good. It's exciting.
It is awesome. But you know what? That's the industry we're in. This is what we're looking to do. We want to teach people about the Australian drone industry. It has similarities with the rest of the world, but it still is very different, overall.
Yeah, 100%.
Sorry, Danny, I was going to say the final thing was registering your RPA, which is obviously, I think, came in June or July this year, right?
Yeah, I think.
Yep.
I can't remember what day.
For commercial operations.
Yeah, I think
so that.
I think it was the year before.
Yes.
So yeah, I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure.
it was.
My
You're
drones have
right,
been
Brendan. It was
registered.
the year before. Then
But they gave us 12 months.
originally
I
it was
think.
supposed to be they gave us 12 months, and then recreational was supposed to be the start of this year. But from what I understand, it was essentially COVID. It's done it to everything as well. But from what I understand, they pushed out the recreational registration for 12 months due to COVID. And obviously, people not doing out there flying and all that kind of jazz. They decided to push it out further. But I do believe by the end of this year, even recreational drones have to be registered. And I think it's even next year, they're looking at recreational pilots having their RAPL, I believe. I could be wrong there. Don't quote me on that one, but I'm pretty sure they're bringing it in.
We're
So that
definitely clicking that tide.
everyone who has a drone will have to have a license.
You got to
Whatever it
tune
is,
in to us for
that's-
the facts.
I think we might actually check on that because
TBC.
yeah, that's an expensive
Yeah.
exercise, especially
I-
on
I-
plastic part.
It is an expensive exercise, but I'm fairly sure I've heard it now on a couple of different channels that essentially that will be the game plan, is that we want every pilot within Australia to hold an RAPL. That means regardless of whether they're recreational or they're professional, they know all the rules. They know what they should and shouldn't be doing. They're not guessing. We're not relying on them to guess. They've got all the knowledge off the bat. And especially with the registrations coming in, I actually believe that's partially the reason the registrations have come in, because now they will actually be able to find out if you are licensed or you are registered. So it's important.
I'm really curious actually, like, it is a very long, lengthy, probably painful process to actually put in place. But then to enforce that is probably even bigger to be able to do. Like every police officer, which I'm sure we've all dealt with police on jobs before, some are very educated, but some don't actually understand.
Yeah.
Now trying to teach them all that, how they're going to do the X, Y, Z and actually enforce the, drone registration properly. That's a whole nother kettle of fish. Who knows how long that's going to take even.
Yeah. And I think,
well, as we were sort of saying with the registrations, and I think you'll find it regardless of the registrations. I'm pretty sure, and you sort of even touched on this before, Danny in Sydney. I'm pretty sure now, as far as it goes, I think it's almost Australia-wide. They are able to track DJI drones in the air, regardless of whether they're registered or not. Other company drones, I'm pretty sure that's still in the works, not necessarily happening yet. But DJI being the most used and most heavily supplied drone to recreational and commercial users around the world, it made sense for them to put that in place. So it's more than likely that Casso and everyone already knows when you're doing pretty silly shit anyways. So you might as well do it properly and do it correctly and do it safely.
So when you want to fly above the fog to get that beautiful sunrise coming through don't. I highly recommend you don't do it, and certainly don't post it on the internet. Just thinking it looks cool.
And even
no matter what Big Brother's watching.
Yeah, exactly right. There's someone
Brandon,
watching.
he'll be sharing it.
I'll be coming after you. Watch it, all right? But
you're gonna start losing friends soon.
I know.
Brendan.
I'm gonna be the hated one. I know. I shouldn't have started.
He's grumpy today. I think today's one of those days. You want to don't post your shit today.
Yeah, do it over the weekend. It'll be fine. Just not midweek.
He doesn't check his socials on
when he's not stressed out.
Yeah, that's it.
So I guess we moves on to our next topic of, if I'm looking to get my RPL or REOC, where do I go? What do I do?
There's a lot of options. Depends on where you are, what state you're in, what restrictions you're facing at the moment. But if we're living in a normal world, there's heaps of people. There's heaps of people to go and get your REOC or your remote pilot license. But just jump on CAS's website. As inefficient as it might be to do that, it is a good
again making friends. Brendan,
can we not get thrown out of this in the first?
I almost said it another way, so the other way was going to be worse. Thought I picked my words quite well there.
Really?
Well, maybe not. Hindsight.
I'm interested to see what the other version was.
No, we
We'll
don't
save-
want
we'll
to
save
hear
that.
the other version.
We'll save
Yeah.
that for the uncut version.
Yeah. No, I think it's as easy as just jumping on Google and just and typing in remote pilot license course near me, and someone will pop up. There's heaps of brands, there's heaps of people, but I know some people even offer part of it online now, and then you can come in and do the practical side. So
how easy is that to do then? You know, a couple of days of theory, and when COVID decides to go away,
yeah,
you can go do your practical.
that's it.
Well, I think one thing to do is test when you call them to see how they return. Do they even return your phone call? If you don't get your phone call in next 2 days, don't bother, because they're not going to
Had
be
a bad
very good at
experience.
training.
I know we're talking about the same company. I'm not
Talking
saying
about
anything.
anyone's experience there at all, Sean, are we?
No.
I love how that company we're thinking about, and I get the complete opposite out of them.
Yeah.
Put me on speed dial.
People just don't like me, Danny.
And I was going to
They
say
see me
about
and
Lovable
run the other way.
character.
I was going to say about the medium, and obviously, if most people are probably working before they kind of want to dip their toes in this sort of industry, and most courses are running 3, 4, 5 days consecutively. So maybe not right at the moment, but that's your typical delivery mechanism. So that may not suit you. So there's quite a few people now do it online, like Brendan highlighted already. So I think you've got to be able to talk to them. They've got to be patient. They shouldn't be shoving down a course down your throat.
Yeah. So the main things to be looking for, like you're not looking for bells and whistles. In the end, all you need is the RAPL. They can offer every certificate under the sun, but that's the one that actually means something. And obviously you REOC when it comes to it.
Yeah, you can always upgrade. That's the thing.
Exactly.
Like you may as well not and it is an expensive process. So that's the other part of it. It's not like a couple of grand you get away with and you got your REOC and you're good to go. It is a long process because you have to get insurance. You have to go through all the CASA stuff as well. It's not a quick process. Like some drag out for 3 to 4 months, depending on the amount of people trying to get their REOC. So
one of my mates actually had to wait about 8 months for his, but that was a few years ago. I think it was kind of the quick boom that the industry had over the years, and he waited a long time. In the end, I think he ended up changed something, went through a delegate, which is a whole nother kettle of fish.
Yeah,
that was a lot more expensive.
And delegates are a great option for some people. Unfortunately, I think the way the industry has gone and how fast it has grown.
And we're back after a battery change, guys. So the next thing we'd like to talk about would be drone insurance. Why do I need drone insurance? The drone doesn't drop out of the sky all the time.
We don't need drone insurance, but we advise probably you should. So
you should want it.
It's like driving an unregistered car. Essentially, you're not going to have an accident, but the odd chance you do have that crash, it could be into a Ferrari, and you don't want to have to pay that.
Yep.
Or a building that's worth 20 million.
No.
Yeah. Smash some windows.
Get on public
Hurt some
liability.
people.
I think
also worth noting too with insurance, going back to the licensing. I mean, we were discussing this before. On your RAPL and just your RAPL, you will actually not be able to get insurance for flight, for commercial flights. You will be able to get insurance for theft, insurance for essentially dropping it and breaking it. But if you're in flight when it happens, not insured. For you to get your drone insured for during flight, you need to have a REOC. If you do not have a REOC, you will not be insured for during flight, and or you're not working under a REOC. So that's something to be very, very aware of. And also, drone insurance isn't cheap.
Especially when you add in
keep
the
in
whole
mind, like,
liability.
Yeah, it's a completely separate insurance policy to everything else that you have. So if you're a surveyor, if you're a photographer or whatever, you've got public liability now or whatever it might be, but you have to, your insurance company that insures you for that might not be able to get aviation insurance to insure you to do drone operations. So you have to take out another policy
Correct.
to get your aviation insurance, because at the end of the day, that's what we're doing. We're in aviation. We're not in surveying or whatever it is. It's a different type of public liability, and it's looked at very differently. And you have a lot more risk profile when you're adding drones to your operation.
Yeah, so I think let's talk a little bit about some of our experiences around policies. So there's obviously public liability, which is your standard, your 20 start. I think 10 mils probably the minimum, but 20 is probably the most average.
Yeah, I think 10 mils in the middle.
Yeah, and then obviously your hull insurance, your airborne equipment, which means it's the drone and probably the battery, not necessarily the controller. So, because that's the thing in the air. So that insurance, like Brendan just talked about, is very much what's in the air. You've got to ask when you get your cover note, does it insure what's on the ground while I'm actually doing my job? If someone's actually stealing something from my ute. So run the scenarios through, because they're more than likely it's not going to get covered. It's probably going to need another policy for your ground equipment. So
yeah, and that can be like you said, Sean, anything out of your car, or if someone runs past and steals your RTK ground system, anything that, like you said, anything that's not in the air, it's not covered. So check it. You have to check it.
Yeah, even to the point, I know we've got separate policies for public liability, where if I'm operating a drone in the air and someone trips over my safety cone that's there, that's actually a different issue. It's not the same thing. It's not the drone flew and hit a building. It's someone who tripped. So you've got to think about the scenarios, and you've got to have that open conversation, especially if you're going to go under, work as a real holder in more commercial operations. But even if you're just flying, I think the best thing to do is just ask the questions, ask the scenarios, maybe post some questions to us so we can do some research ourselves and raise some of this stuff and share it with the rest of the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think because we cross over two different types of industries, it's not looked at the same way. So it's annoying and frustrating, and it might change in the future, but right now that's what it is. And you have to be across it and understand that you play in two different fields when it comes to insurance, because
the insurance industry is learning themselves, like us, right?
Yeah.
So
and a new industry is a new industry. They've got to get up to speed the same way we all have to.
Yeah,
that's right.
And it's just a very expensive process.
Yeah,
which is why I think the scenarios is good, because even when we were applying, unless you asked the questions, I was just shocked what some of the things weren't covered. But you got to ask the questions, I think, so you're comfortable.
Definitely.
And at least you know what you are not covered for, because if you just assume, you should just never assume that you're covered for it. So you've got to check, because some of the equipment that we use is really expensive, and if it's damaged or stolen or whatever and we're not covered, it's just money out of your pocket. So it's better to be safe than sorry.
What do they say about assume? You make an ass out of you and me.
Used to use that all the time in the kitchen.
You and Danny have been practicing, man, writing stuff down.
Good at this.
Have you guys been sharing recipes as well? Or?
Have been.
We said
I reckon
there.
I can cook a better pulled beef than Danny, so we'll see how that goes.
Oh, no comment. I got nothing. I guess, guys, that time of the week right now, we get visited by our dear friend, Safety Ty. So Ty's
Safety guy.
Wow.
Oh,
Ty's back.
wow.
Hey, Safety Ty, how are you?
Yeah.
What have you got for us this week, buddy?
Yeah, I'm not a roller today, so I had to work with that. All right. So this week we've got a little bit of an entertaining dummy of the week, I think is a good way to put it. It's a little bit of a giggle, but it does obviously address a few things that are completely wrong, obviously. Bringing this up now. Hold on.
Looking in the mirror.
The end of it. But cool.
If only had a Red Bull hat.
What are you trying to say, Danny? All right. So as you can see, someone's taken a drone to a zoo and they're flying near the chimpanzee enclosure. And that chimpanzee was not very happy, as you can see. He's also having a nice little look at what's been flying around and annoying him. And getting a much closer view of the chimpanzee here. And then I think he turns around, hey, there's a nice chimp selfie.
And
That's the
how,
thumbnail, I guess.
Yeah.
that's definitely the thumbnail.
I'll give it one more. I'll give it one more run through, so we can have a bit more of a chat about it, and you guys can have a bit of a look. And obviously, the folks at home that are actually watching visually. For the folks not watching visually, I'll give it a little bit of a breakdown. You have the pilot flying. Essentially, if you've been to a zoo, you would have seen monkey enclosures where they're in the middle of essentially a moat on a little island. And this drone pilot flew in to have a better look at the chimpanzees. Got a little bit close, and one of the chimpanzees wasn't very happy and essentially beat the drone out of the sky with a stick. And then decided to investigate the drone closer, and eventually it ends up with him essentially taking a selfie of himself. So break it down, guys. What have you got to say about that one?
I've been to quite a few zoos, and most of them have signs saying no drones.
I was going to say the pre-flight probably wasn't very detailed.
No, definitely not.
I'd say there wasn't one.
That was the definition. That was the definition of.
And look, yeah. Look, and this is something that I'm passionate about as well. The whole wildlife and drones. Again, it applies. You need to stay clear of them. You need to be 30 meters clear. In some cases, a lot greater distances depending on the animal. But I go back to them a lot because animals react differently around drones. Look, anyone who's a pilot has dogs. I guarantee you've seen it.
Yep.
One of my dogs actually decided to try and take my DJI Spark out of the air at our old house. She didn't get there, but she got very close. But in the day she grabbed it, she would have copped a blade in the mouth, and it wouldn't have been a pretty sight for me. An expensive built vet. But yeah, and look, it's for their safety. It's exactly what it's for. It's for their safety. All the rules that are in place, and not even just for wildlife, are for safety. So, but yeah, I could go on for hours about wildlife and drones, and I'm going to save that for a whole episode on it, because I really would rip through some Insta pilots. So we'll just leave that one alone for now.
Is that a warning, Ty? Is that a warning? Are we just preparing?
Oh
people
yeah,
on
the
Instagram,
day we get to that, I'm going to
name and
rip
shame.
some new ones.
I feel like that's going to be an episode I'm going to have to sit out, guys. Not associated with my...
Yeah, just let me go through your profile first, Danny, and then see what I can find, and I can add it to my list.
What up, block. How many accounts have you got? Blocked. I keep all mine above board on there at least, because yet again, once it's on the internet, it's everywhere. It can be held against you as legal.
Yeah, exactly.
There's only so many times you can say I've found
exactly.
it.
Is there anything else you? Yeah, well, that's it. Is there anything else you guys want to sort of add into that? I mean, there's a lot there you can break down if you really want to. So
don't be a monkey.
Well, I think you said it really well. That 30-meter exclusion, that clearly, if you kind of practice the basics that we talked about at the start, you're going to end up in that scenario with an expensive drone destroyed, probably. So
I'd be really interested to see if it was actually a worker that's done that, or if it was a public.
Right.
I reckon that's a 50-50, because I have not necessarily in Australia, but when I've been overseas, I have seen some people do some really, really stupid shit in zoos. So I wouldn't be surprised if it was an actual paying customer to the zoo. But it very well also could have been someone working at the zoo, and they might have actually had a reason for doing so. But if they were doing it for work at the zoo and they did have a reason for doing so, they did not do it properly and they did not do it safely. So makes
At
it
least-
not cool.
At least the monkey was smart enough to not try and grab it himself. He used a stick, like probably smarter than the pilot in that sense.
Yeah. Well, chimpanzees are quite intelligent, so
Yeah.
I'm sure there's some people that probably sit below the IQ spectrum of a chimpanzee.
Well,
But yeah, look, it's end of the day. At least I can appreciate that he picked it up and had a bit of a look and realized it was a camera and got himself a selfie at the end of it, which I think's golden. But yeah, look, it's definitely unsafe.
I reckon that's thumbnail material.
Definitely.
And on that note, folks, I reckon that's us for episode 3 of the Drones Down Under podcast.
Wow. Flying through them, guys.
Yeah.
Killer.
Keep an eye
Thank
out.
you.
Keep an eye out
It's
for the
great.
next episode,
Yeah.
guys. It's been
I
a
think-
pleasure to chat to you.
I think the listeners should be really pumped. I know we mentioned it earlier about what we've got kind of coming up. Like, we've actually got an unreal list of people coming onto this podcast, and I think we're really going to hit the mark on bringing a lot of value. And it's a lot of different opinions, a lot of different angles from the drone industry. So I hope anyone listening just stick with us, because over the next couple of weeks, it's going to be pretty cool what we're releasing and the people we're talking to, because they're all about what we're about. And that's what we want. We want to promote people within the industry and that support our industry as well in many ways, shapes and forms. So I think
And
we need to get around
Australian,
it.
Australian based, right? Which is really exciting.
All Australia. Yeah, it's exactly
Yeah.
right. Everyone's here, and they're happy to jump on, talk about what they're doing. Yeah, it's good. I'm excited about it, and hopefully the listeners can stick around and see what we've got in store.
Yeah, there's definitely a couple of guests on that list that I'm really excited to pick their brain a little bit.
I wonder who.
Like you said, Brendan. Yeah, look, probably the one that I'm not allowed to pick their brain.
Yeah, no.
There's a reason we're not going to shoot that one live.
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh.
exactly.
All right.
But look, I think what we're going to bring to the table, and particularly on the guests, it's a very, very broad spectrum of our industry, and
Yeah.
I think for the listeners out there, regardless of where you're sitting in the industry, again, whether it's someone that's just interested in drones, or it's someone that's sitting in a heavily working position within the industry, it doesn't really matter at the moment. What we're going to give you guys is, you won't find it anywhere else, to be honest. So,
Like,
We're leaving no stone unturned.
that's right. And I think the thing that we're building and trying to do within the Australian industry is promote people within the drone industry, what they're doing, different aspects, and we're all supporting one another. It's not like we're just picking people we want to speak to. It's actually people that are changing how the industry works, different workflows, the value that they bring, and also learning about their story as well, about where they started, how they got into the space, and where they think the drone industry is going as well. So I think that's the really exciting part, is learning that how many people are coming into this industry because of how big it's going to become in Australia. That's the really cool part.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Most definitely.
Right on.
Awesome.
Awesome.
All right. Well, guys,
Till
it's been
the
a
next.
pleasure. Catch us in
next
the next episode. Peace
See you
out.
later.
Bye.
have a good night, guys.